You're listening to Mission Eve, a podcast that explores the stories of women who are opening the frontier of space to humanity. Your host is Megan Crawford, managing partner of Space Fund, a venture capital firm investing in the space industry. She is a mother, volunteer, founder, and true believer in humanity's future in space. Mission Eve is meant to inspire the girls of today who will be the women of tomorrow, leading our first permanent off-world settlements. Space needs women. Space needs you.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Eve. I'm Megan Crawford, your host, and today I am thrilled to have Sarah Cruddas on the show with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Great, yeah. I'm hoping my voice holds out, so I'm losing my voice, but I'm going to power through for you.
Excellent. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about your story and how you got here. Where were you born?
Oh my gosh, I never get asked things like this. I'm used to being the one asking the question. So what I do now is I'm a space journalist, TV host, author and scientist, amongst other things. But I was born in Wales. I don't have the Welsh accent. And then I grew up in a town called Hull in the northeast of England. And I think Hull's a great place, but it's as far removed from space as you can possibly be. But I, for as long as I can remember, I've been inspired by space exploration, and by, one of my first memories actually is of looking up at the moon and being inspired and being curious about that. And it's interesting you ask that question of where you're born, because actually when I work in the space industry and through the work that I do, it's often a case of it's not about where you're from, but where you're heading and the opportunity and the inspiration that space can give you. Excellent.
And were there any particular people or events in your childhood that were that helped to give you that inspiration, or that were instrumental in you deciding space was definitely for you?
That's a great question, because it's easy to say it was all me. But the truth is that no one's self-made. Yes, some people come from better backgrounds than other people, but although I don't know where my inspiration about space came from. I mentioned looking up at the moon. That was one of my first memories. And I came from a family, I was the first in my family to go to university. I wasn't from that sort of academic background, so there was no real influence, someone telling me about space, but people helped me along the way. Teachers were great. I once won a scholarship to space camp when I was 16 years old. And teachers who would read extra reports I wrote on science, or, local libraries and reading great science books. So although there was no one person who actually singly inspired me, there were a lot of people in my life who helped to not so much fuel that interest, but to tell me that, stuff was possible. No one told me you couldn't do what you wanted to do. So my whole passion from space came from something which I can't explain. It's just that curiosity I think we all have, and we all probably share, but I never lost it. And then a lot of people on the way just encouraged me and didn't tell me I wasn't good enough. And that is really instrumental. But it'd be wrong of me to sit here and say I'm self-made, because no one is.
So tell me about space camp.
No. So I went to space camp when I was 16 years old. So again, growing up in Hull's, there are some deprived areas in Hull, and to go to America alone at 16 years old and go to NASA. And that's so removed from the United Kingdom and this town I grew up in. And to actually, I remember my first memory actually arriving at space camp as a teenager, like this nerdy teenager, big on space. And you see the sign at the entrance to space camp, and it says, "Through these doors walk America's future astronauts, scientists, and engineers." And you can't underestimate the power of seeing a sign like that on young minds. And it really stuck with me. And it's that. So what I do nowadays is try and inspire as many people as possible about space. And actually what helped me the most was going somewhere like space camp and just that inspiration that, do you know what? Nothing's impossible. I can do this. People have walked through those doors at space camp and become astronauts and scientists and engineers. And although I'm not an astronaut, it helped to fuel my interest in space.
So did you want to be an astronaut when you were a kid?
The problem is being England, being British even, coming from the UK, is that when I was growing up in the 1990s, it wasn't really a thing. We didn't really have any astronauts. We had Helen Sharman, but she was a private astronaut. And then it took until 2015 for Tim Peake to become the first official British astronaut. So it was kind of one of those things that you thought, well, I can't do this because I'm from the UK. But of course I wanted to be an astronaut. I used to, I remember growing up and thinking by the year 2020, I'd be walking on Mars. And I remember thinking, whoa, I'm going to be in my 30s. That's pretty old. But, aside from that, I might be able to go to Mars in the year 2020. And of course, that didn't happen. That's still a way away, but we're looking at heading back to the moon. But that was, of course I wanted to be an astronaut. Of course I wanted to go to space. And what I love now about the industry we're in is it's not just about scientists and engineers and military personnel going to space. It's also about, with the commercial tourism aspect taking off, no pun intended, it's about artists and scientists and politicians and everyday people, house husbands from Arkansas, as I like to say, sending a range of people into space. So I'm still optimistic that at some point I'll get to travel to space, but not as a professional astronaut.
A lot less pressure when you're not there to work. You're just there to have fun.
Yeah, you wouldn't want me flying your spaceship.
So what did you study in college?
So I did physics with astrophysics at the University of Leicester. So I did an MPhys in that. And then I wanted to do a PhD originally, but I got sidetracked along the way. And I was actually backpacking around South America, as you do in one of the summer breaks during university, as we call it in England, or college for you Americans. And it was just a privilege to see other parts of the world, to see Uruguay and Bolivia, and actually poverty that I'd never experienced. And this kind of inspired me to tell stories. Instead of being a scientist, I wanted to tell stories. So then I did a master's in broadcast journalism, and after that
So an undergrad in astrophysics and a master's
in broadcast journalism, because
as one does. Yeah.
I realized I was. I always say when I speak to young people, do as I say, not as I do, because I never did that PhD. I never became a scientist, and we need scientists. We need bright minds. But my skills are in telling stories and inspiring other people. So 2 skill sets there: communications and STEM.
Perfect. And how many majors did you cycle through, or were you just pretty solid about that first degree and then just the quick switch to the second one?
Do you know, it's interesting because with hindsight, I wish I'd either done mathematics with astronomy or engineering, but I didn't know about engineering. I wasn't from the sort of background where people really told you about those subjects. But astrophysics was the most spacey degree that I could think of. And I think my mind was always set on that. So the education system is slightly different. So we specialise at 16. So at 16, I did further maths, chemistry and physics. I was so much fun. So I knew I wanted to go in the STEM subjects, and astrophysics seemed the right pathway for me. But with hindsight, I may have looked into engineering, but I'm proud to have an astrophysics background. I'm proud to be, like, when I was doing my degree, I was one of maybe 7 or 8 women on a course of 80 people. And I'm proud now that you see more women around doing STEM subjects.
Excellent. So what was your first job, like your very first job?
When as a teenager or So my first job was a paper round, and then I worked in a factory picking tomatoes in order to pay to do an extra qualification in astronomy, and then to pay to go to the British Space Camp as well. So I've worked since I was like 12, 13 years old. But my first real job, my first grown-up job, was actually as a weather presenter with the BBC. So it's an interesting story. So I did my astrophysics degree, and then I did my postgrad in broadcast journalism, and then I was like, I need to get a job, and they were advertising for weather presenters, and I was like, I'm only an astrophysicist, I'm not sure they'll hire me, and they hired me immediately. So I worked for Look North, which is one of the BBC channels in the UK, and I did the TV weather forecasts, and it was great fun, but I've always wanted to be back in the space world. So it was a great platform to actually get a lot of experience in television and broadcasting, and then utilize that job to follow my dreams.
And so then what came next?
What came next was that I started using my free time. So I did breakfast television with the BBC, and in the afternoons I would sell stories about space. And then I went out to NASA for the final space shuttle launch and landing, and I took a risk. And I sold coverage back to the BBC about the landing, and I realised I can do this. I took a risk. I didn't think anyone would want to hear my work. There were other more experienced journalists there, but I managed to sell in my stories. And then when I came back, I became a science correspondent with the BBC. And then I'm a big believer in this is it. We only get one life, and you've got to follow your passions. And I had a crossroads. I think I was 27, 28 years old. And I was like, I could stay at the BBC and have this great steady job in news with the BBC, and it's a fantastic broadcaster, or I can leave and follow my own destiny. So I actually decided to leave the BBC, and I needed a job title. So I was like, I'll call myself a space journalist. I'm not even sure if the official term space journalist was a term back then. And I took it from then. The rest is history. I think you've got to follow your passion, pursue your dreams. Like, you make your dreams come true. No one else does. So that's how I kind of started as a weather presenter, started selling stories about space. And actually, there's a great story. I interviewed a British-American astronaut called Piers Sellers. So he was born British, but became an American to follow his dreams of going into space. And interviewing him just before I left the BBC made me realize that anything's possible. He was a British guy who became an American, and went to space. He took bark from Isaac Newton's apple tree into space. And
that's so cool.
I know. And he had the time to interview me. He had the time to speak to me. And, it goes back to the whole idea of no one's self-made. You never know how powerful just a short conversation is, even if it's just a 5-minute conversation in inspiring someone to go and do something great.
Wonderful. I love that. That's a great story. So, so after you left the BBC and now you're selling stories back to them, and you've given yourself this title of space journalist.
I was selling stories back when I was still with them.
So what do you do as a space journalist? What does that mean?
That's a great question. So I have many jobs is the best way to do it. I don't even know how my path kind of created itself. I kind of went down to London and I was like, I'll get an agent, I'll get a TV show immediately. And I failed. And then I failed loads of times, and I continued to fail. And then I succeeded in something and then something else. So basically, like everyone else, I've failed a lot of times, but I've continued. So being a space journalist, my official job title, I guess, is like space journalist, TV host, author. And then I'm almost like, I don't like the title, but some people use it like a thought leader in the commercial space sector. So basically, I talk about space a lot. I write books about space. I remember I was once told I'd never write a book. So I'm just currently writing my 4th book at the moment. Like, wow. I like to, defy the odds and to prove people wrong. And my job's completely varied. So I have a TV series on the Discovery Channel in the US. I do TV in the UK with various broadcasters there, write books about space, go and host a lot of events, and then work with companies to help them tell their story, because my real passion is to, inspire as many people as possible, not just people from great backgrounds, but people from the town like I grew up in, and to tell them that actually space matters. Space is shaping your lives. You might not think about it, but space is all around us. I mean, if you've got a cell phone, you've got a space receiver in your pocket. And it's that kind of giving meaning to people's lives as well, because all of us want meaning, and space can give us that. So inspiring people from all walks of life, just to look up a little bit more, just to be a little bit more curious. And you can't underestimate the value in that happening to someone else's life.
So tell us about your books. What are the names of the books?
Yeah,
tell us about the shows. Yes, we definitely. We want people to be able to find them. So
my latest, my 4th book that I'm currently writing, I can't talk about it just yet, but it's going to be my first adults title, which I'm so excited about. It's going to be coming out in October 2020. So I'm currently on a writing deadline at the moment. So if my editor's listening to this, I am busy writing, I promise. My last book, which came out this year, so in May 2019, was called The Space Race. And that was a children's book. And it's not just a story of how we got to the moon or how we got to now, but also where we're heading in our space future. And I was really conscious to try and involve as many women in this as possible, because you look at the story of how we went to the moon and it's on the surface mostly white men. And that's okay. But there were also a lot of other people from other backgrounds who were involved in that. So for the foreword for the book, I was so privileged to have Eileen Collins, astronaut Eileen Collins, the first woman to ever command a space shuttle mission. She wrote the foreword for this book for me, which was fantastic. And there's actually a special signed copy, signed both by myself and by Eileen Collins, which is with the Astronaut Memorial Foundation down in Florida, which is a cause close to my heart, actually, because growing up, one of the things which inspired me. I apologize for all the tangents I go on as well.
I love it.
Growing up, one of the things which inspired me. So I'm a space shuttle child, like you are too. I don't mean this is morbid as this sentence will come out, but the Challenger incident had a huge impact. I don't remember the Challenger. I think I was 1 or 2 years old, but the actual incident itself had a huge impact on my life, not because of what happened, but because so many stories were told about the people on board the Challenger, and the way they lived their lives truly inspired me. So where did we get onto this point?
We were talking about your book, the one that just released.
So,
and Eileen Collins.
I've been inspired by a lot of the space shuttle astronauts, so I wanted to tell their stories as well.
And so what are the 2 books before that?
The 2 books before that. One more thing about my book, The Space Race. I launched it into space as well. It became the first British children's book to actually be launched into space, which I did. Well, I say space, I mean edge of space, because I used a high altitude balloon to send it there. But there's, I had a photograph of myself and Eileen Collins in that book, which went to space. So technically I have been to space with Eileen Collins as well. And then I had 2 previous children's books before that book, and they're both published by Dorling Kindersley as well.
Wonderful. And what's your Discovery Channel show? It's
called Contact, and it's been an amazing adventure. So I have to shout out to Nick Carnesi, who I've been partnered with on this show. He's my teammate, and we've just had this amazing adventure going around the world, looking at whether contact has been made. Is there evidence that contact has been made, or are we all alone in the universe? And trying to answer those fundamental questions, and going to a lot of extreme places, like hiding from the cartel in the jungles in Mexico and living in caves, and just, trying to use entertainment and television to inspire people about space and to inspire people's curiosity.
Wonderful, wonderful. And any other projects that you're working on? You had a whole list there.
Yeah, I'll probably go off on a tangent and then I'll forget because I'm horrendously developed. Any other projects that I'm working on? Quite a lot of public speaking at the moment. So I'm looking forward to some events which are coming up in the next few months as well. And then other television projects that I'm not allowed to talk about at the moment. And then other corporate projects which are coming up next year. This is the problem when you work in the media. There's a lot that you can't talk about, but I'm just so excited to be given this opportunity to talk about space and to hopefully inspire people.
Wonderful. So if you were talking to a woman who was interested in coming into the space industry, what advice would you give?
That's a great question. Just follow your dreams. Like, you make them come true. Don't be put off by anything. You deserve a seat at the table as much as the next person. So just take it, take that seat, be confident, and no one's better than you. But you're also not better than anyone else. We're all equal.
Perfect. Have you had any challenges as a woman in the space industry? Has there been anything that, because you said earlier when you were young, you had a lot of teachers and people that encouraged you and nobody that ever said you can't do this. But have you ever come up against one of those you can't do this moments or anything else that, maybe discouraged you because you were a woman?
See, I'm in an interesting position because I'm half in space and I'm half in the media. So which is the harder industry? I would actually go and say that space people are good people. Space people are a privilege to work with. Media people are fantastic as well, but there's something about what's happening with space people because we're all on this mission. We're all on this incredible journey. We want to, it's the pursuit of something greater than ourselves. That's why we're all in this. We're curious. We want to know what is out there. So I would actually say most people in the space industry have been incredibly welcoming to me. And, it's not perfect. I'm tired of sitting on panels. My main job is often moderating panels, but it is a skill, trust me, when you have great moderation.
I know. I've been there, done that, yes.
I guess my only frustration is that we need to make sure when we have events that there is representation in panels. See, this is my voice going again. Because if we want a space future, we need to involve everyone. We're going, when you see the Earth from space, you see this blue marble and there's, it's like a spaceship and there's 7 billion people living on there. And if you're just going to have one social demographic, you're excluding much of the population. So if we're going to talk about the future, we need to have diverse panels. We need to have a range of backgrounds. All of us are responsible for speaking up and saying that's not okay. And we need to have more diversity. But on a personal note, my overwhelming experience within the space industry has been a fantastic one. I have so many incredible friends within this industry, and I'm just so proud of everything that everyone's doing. But moving forward, let's continue and I know people are trying to change this, so let's continue the great work to be more inclusive and to make sure no one's left out, and that we speak to diverse communities and we try and understand people who have different opinions to ourselves. Because if we're going to go forward in space exploration, we need to understand why people think differently to us. And the world is a divided place at the moment, but space really has the potential to unite us. And I should also mention one other thing I'm working on at the moment. And when you asked me about the projects that I'm doing, Space for Humanity as well. So I'm a executive director on the board at Space for Humanity. And this is an organization which wants to send ordinary people into space. When I say ordinary, actually no one's ordinary. Everyone is extraordinary, but people from diverse backgrounds, and these are fully funded missions with suborbital flights, with commercial spaceflight partners. And it's just so proud to be, I'm so proud to be once again working to inspire people about space and to give people opportunities.
And so I think you know that I'm very familiar with that organization. I love the organization and the people there. And one of the things that I think is so exciting about it is that these ordinary people who aren't ordinary, but going back to their local communities all over the world and sharing that experience with others. Right now, the astronaut corps, for example, they do a lot of speaking gigs and a lot of sharing, but you have to be a certain type of person to even be in a room with an astronaut, right? So to have Joe from down the street at your barbecue talking about his experience in space, I think is really going to open it up to everybody.
So we had a great event, a great Space for Humanity event, and Michael Lopez Alegria, the astronaut, was there, and he was talking about how, the 60. So we're in the space community. We work with astronauts, we know astronauts, but most people don't have that connection to space in the same way. But imagine when, as you say, Joe from down the street or Joanne goes into space, and then you're like, hey, my neighbor went to space. And suddenly people from all different walks of life are connected to space because they know someone who's been to space, in the same way that you might know someone who knows someone who knows someone famous. It's that same kind of like Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation. And I think, we went into space, fewer than 600 human beings have been into space, and they came back artists or priests or people who did better things for their planet. So what's going to happen when we send more people? Only good things can happen with that perspective shift, that giving people the opportunity to experience our planet from afar, realize that, it's the cliche, there are no borders from space. We're all in this together. Our planet's really fragile. It's good. You can't measure that. You can't measure the profound impact that's going to have.
Agreed. So what are your long-term career goals? Where do you see yourself going from here?
Queen of TV space.
We're going to have our own space TV channel.
Sure, let's do it. Let's do it. I want to continue to utilize, I think talking is a good skill of mine when I have a voice, but I just want to continue to inspire. I'm not from the best of backgrounds, but I made it in space. I want to inspire everyone about why space matters and to enrich people's lives. The goal is that one which sounds like science fiction, but the long-term goal for the space industry is to be a multiplanetary species. I am so privileged that my short time on Earth is in some way working towards that, be that telling that story or inspiring others. So my long-term goal is to continue working in television, writing books, speaking to people like you and inspiring as many people as possible about why space matters and contributing to the world, because what a great impact to have on society and humanity that you're part of something greater than ourselves. You're part of inspiring. Like when I give talks to kids, and in the last page of my book, The Space Race, I had a footprint on Mars mocked up. And the first person to walk on Mars right now is probably a preschooler, probably around 5 or 6 years old. And that's incredible to think that a conversation you have or a book you write or a story you tell could inspire the first human being to walk on Mars. Like
that is amazing. Yeah, that's wonderful.
And one of my favorite pictures to show when I give talks to adults and to kids actually is the sunset on Mars, the blue sunset. And just to imagine that one day, can you even imagine that, like landing on Mars, adjusting to the gravity, you're obviously going to be wobbly because it's been a long journey, opening that door, setting foot on Mars and seeing that blue sunset, like that would just be, but that could be within our lifetime. And so my goal is just to continue to inspire. It's not going to be me going to Mars because 2020 is right around the corner, but it's going to be someone. And we're all part of it, and then that's our first step towards becoming a multiplanetary species. And I like to say, science fiction eventually becomes science prediction because, all the things you imagine eventually come true, and then all the things you can't imagine come true also.
Yeah, it's amazing. To think back just a little over 100 years ago, we hadn't even flown anything before. And that within our lifetimes, we will see humans break out of the gravity well of Earth permanently. I strongly believe that. And another organization, nonprofit that we're both involved with and very fond of, the Space Frontier Foundation, talks about using the power of free enterprise to lift humanity permanently off world. And to me, that's the thing that really drives me and keeps me going. But I agree, we've got to inspire those people to come help make it happen, right? So,
and also to be on board, because if you don't want to create divisions in society. So if you've got space people and then people who just don't understand what's going on, you're going to get those frustrations, and you shouldn't just go out and do it anyway. But I do feel like one of the great messages to kind of communicate as well is that what we're doing in space is no different. We explored Earth, and now it's just a different playing field, but the ideas are the same. We're not going to be taking the kitchen sink to us or to Mars with us. We're going to be 3D printing everything we need eventually, So it's just an extension of life on Earth. And just as humans, thousands of years ago left the caves, now Earth is the cave.
There you go. I love that analogy. So
I'm full of analogies.
So you keep talking about Mars. How do you feel about the moon, free space? Sometimes in the industry we have kind of a friendly battle: moon versus Mars versus free space is the best destination for people to live. What are your thoughts?
I think it's all good, but I do. I'm so excited by the potential that we could be back in the moon. That will be, next man and first woman on the moon. That's incredible. And, in order to get to Mars, we need to go back to the moon. We've nearly lost the Apollo generation. I've been lucky enough to work with 3 of the moonwalkers. That's a huge privilege. But we've nearly lost them. We've nearly lost all that brain power that made Apollo possible. But instead, we learned how to live and work in space. And we live in a space age which is on Earth, but benefited by technology in space, satellite technology, which improves our everyday lives. We need to go back to the moon. The moon is close, relatively speaking, in terms of space. And we need to test out our technologies. We need to make it safer. And we need to work out how we're going to live and work on the moon, now that we've learned how to live and work in space around, orbiting around the Earth. So the moon is, in my opinion, our next step. And then it's onward to Mars, and we're not going back to the moon, actually, we're going forward to the moon, because it's a new type of exploration. The first time we went to the moon, it was flags and footprints. It was a Cold War, 2 superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. This time it's about going there to stay.
That's what one thing that whenever people say that we never walked on the moon, the best response is, we were in the middle of a Cold War. Don't you think the Soviets would have said something if we hadn't actually done it?
Sometimes I think maybe the best response is when they ask, did we walk on the moon? You just say, I can't tell you. And then they... But the problem is there is a problem with STEM illiteracy within the media at the moment. And as a whole, people go to YouTube and they find an opinion which aligns with their own thoughts and they just believe it. It's a difficult thing. You've got flat earthers and you've got, we didn't land on the moon. But in all honesty, in all seriousness, my genuine response is just not to acknowledge it. We shouldn't even be debating this.
Yeah, it's not a thing to debate. Yeah, I agree. So tell me what you do for fun.
Oh gosh, I attend space conferences. So my greatest passion other than space is travel. I've been privileged, I've been to places like North Korea, Transnistria, which I don't think is even a country or recognized as a country by some places, or Central Africa. And I love to explore. I love to travel. I love adventures. I love that feeling of being lost. Like you arrive in a new place and you don't know your surroundings. And I love that. I travel an insane amount. I think I'm up to 68, 70 transatlantic flights already this year. But it's this passion just to explore and just to see our world and just to see how diverse life is. And it was traveling that fueled my desire to go and communicate stories about space, traveling around Latin America. And it's that I think it enriches people when we travel, when we step out of our comfort zones, when we see other cultures, other societies, and see how people's opinions differentiate from our own, and just to meet people and to talk to them and to hear their stories.
Where's the most exciting place you've ever visited?
Probably North Korea.
Yeah, it kept you on your toes, I imagine.
Yeah. Do you know so I crossed the Yellow River, which is to get you from China to Dandong in China to Sinuiju, North Korea. And the first thing you see is a giant water slide and a Ferris wheel, and it's a fascinating experience. And our planet is weird and wonderful, and we are privileged to be born where we are. So I I'm privileged to have 2 countries to call home at the moment, the US and the UK. And I think traveling can make you humble and it can make you gracious, but then you shouldn't assume you're better because of a nation that you live in. So that was a great experience. And then I love America. Like I know we're in America right now, but what I love about America, and it is my second home, is that go-getting spirit. And I feel one of the reasons that America really leads the way in terms of space is because you were the guys who left Europe. It's in your DNA. Exploration is in your DNA because you left the old world and you founded the new world. Your ancestors were travelers and they were explorers and they took a risk and created this great nation. So it makes sense that you now want to go to space because it's who you are and it's in your DNA. And I feel so alive when I'm in America. I feel so positive about all the opportunities and the idea that things don't feel impossible when you're here and that you can create an idea, you can have this bold vision and no one tells you no. They might not tell you yes, but no one tells you no. And so I love visiting America. I'm trying to visit every state at the moment, and it's just
that's fun. Yeah. I haven't even done that. I know I've been an American obviously my whole life, and I haven't gone to all the states.
I think I'm up to 29.
Excellent. That's pretty good count. Yeah.
I love Kansas. I spent a lot of time filming in Kansas this year. It was tornado season, which is frightening for me. I love Alaska. Incredibly beautiful. I spend a lot of time in California, so I love California as well. I love Texas because it's so different. Everything's bigger in Texas. I love Texas, and I love the diversity of this country. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. We're happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm a good old Texas girl. I'm actually 5th generation native Houstonian on my mother's side. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. My dad's from Philly, but mom's got deep roots in Houston. So, big fan of Texas. So thank you.
There we go. Team Texas.
All right. So the final question that we ask everybody when the time comes to settle space, will you go?
When the time comes to will I go permanently or will I?
Well, the assumption is that there is some return trip action available, right? You're not going to send people just be gone forever, right?
Throughout history, exploration was a one-way trip. It's only in space it's been returned.
Right. Exactly. Like when they came to America, there was no going back. Right?
You're not English for a reason.
And so, but I think that because early settlements will be government settlements, I don't think that it's going to be a no return situation. I think that the governments will have. So
is this like a suborbital flight or is this a trip to the moon?
Well, it's a settlement. And so, what ISS right now is more like camping than a settlement, right? But I do feel like on the moon is probably going to be where you have your first permanent human settlements that are more like kind of Arctic, adventures where you go and you stay for a year, you stay through the winter or whatever. Would you go?
I'm the kind of person who is scared of everything, but does a lot of crazy things anyhow. So sure, I would in a heartbeat. Just imagine going to the moon and being able to look back at Earth and being able to color it literally with your thumb, and that's everything you've ever known in that pale blue marble, floating in the darkness of space. And I think to experience that would be both terrifying and inspiring beyond words. Something you can't even imagine. So the thought of for as long as humans have existed, they've been curious about space and they've wondered. But all of us alive today, we're the generation that live in the space age. Of all the humans that have ever existed, we're the ones who are spacefaring. So to not take that opportunity, to not want to leave Earth and to look back at Earth and to see where we come from and then to look out at space and to look forward to where we're heading, from the other side of the moon. Yeah, absolutely. I would go.
Excellent.
Would you go?
Absolutely. I'll see you there.
We'll go together. No, I think it's, again, another cliche, but we're on the cusp of something we can't even begin to imagine. And there are a lot of problems. We need to be looking after our planet as well. There's a lot of issues, but space gives us solutions as how to do that. And space gives us a realization of the problems which are happening on Earth. But I think it is who we are. We are humans. We were built. That's what differentiates us from every other species that exists on this planet. We were built to explore. We're built to ask questions. Space is just that next hill. So if I had the opportunity to go, I would be terrified, but I would be there.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate having you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Mission Eve is a production of the Center for Space, Commerce, and Finance, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to educating entrepreneurs and investors about their respective challenges and opportunities as it relates to space. Megan Crawford has been your host and executive producer. Aaron Pagel is the executive director for the center and producer and editor for this episode. Marketing and communications for Mission Eve is managed by Nikki Martinez. Theme music has been composed by Liz Fole. If you'd like to support this podcast, please visit patreon.com/missioneve to become a monthly subscriber. We have multiple tiers available with benefits like personalized thank yous, access to limited edition t-shirts, opportunities to engage with our interviewees via online Ask Me Anything sessions, and small group gatherings with Megan Crawford when available. Any support you can offer will go a long way to helping us continue to tell the stories of the women who are making life in space a reality. Please follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Center for Space, Commerce, and Finance, Twitter at CSCF_nonprofit, and LinkedIn at linkedin.com/company/CSCF. Thank you very much for listening.